He assumed she was just another black woman he could push around, until she walked into that courtroom and ended his career. The road was nearly deserted that night. A few cars passed, their headlights reflecting off the damp pavement. The street lamps buzzed and flickered, throwing elongated shadows across the highway just outside Birmingham, Alabama. It was late, just after 11 p.m., the kind of time when most people just wanted to get home. Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson had already been on the road for nearly 2 hours, her fingers tapping softly on the steering wheel as she hummed to a mellow jazz track playing through the car speakers. She wasn't in uniform, just a plain black sweater and jeans, her hair tied back. She blended in, or at least she thought so. Then she noticed flashing lights in her rearview mirror, red and blue fast approaching. Her stomach knotted, not from fear, but fatigue. She'd been through this routine before. She turned on her signal, changed lanes, and gradually pulled over onto the shoulder. After putting the car in park, she exhaled slowly, resting both hands where they were clearly visible. Years in the military had taught her the protocol. A white cruiser rolled to a stop behind her. The officer took his time getting out. When he did, he moved like someone used to being obeyed, boots scraping pavement, one hand resting on his belt, the other holding a flashlight that clicked on as he walked up. She tilted her head slightly to watch him in the side mirror. The badge caught the light. Briggs. License and registration, he said flatly. No hello. No explanation. Just a practiced, impatient tone. Renee met his eyes in the mirror, then reached calmly into the glove box to retrieve her paperwork. Was I speeding, officer? She asked, her voice calm. Briggs didn't answer right away. He snatched the documents from her hand, holding them just out of reach as he scanned her vehicle. Tail lights out, he muttered. She frowned. That doesn't seem right. He finally looked directly at her. Are you questioning me? A brief silence settled. Renee recognized the moment, that quiet clash where authority expected submission. She had seen it before, in military briefings, in war zones, in scenarios preparing sailors for civilian life. She wasn't about to escalate, but she also wouldn't be walked over. I'm just saying, she responded steadily. My lights were checked recently. If there's a problem, I'll fix it. Step out of the vehicle, Briggs interrupted, like he hadn't heard her at all. Renee breathed out slowly and glanced at the road. No witnesses? She tapped the steering wheel once, then reached for the door handle. May I ask why? Briggs tilted his head and smirked. Because I said so. She let that hang in silence for a moment, then unfastened her seatbelt and stepped out into the night air, which was cooler than she expected. Her stance was calm but composed. She wasn't looking for conflict, but she wouldn't be intimidated. Briggs took a step back, eyeing her as though calculating just how far he could go. Turn around, hands on the car. This time she paused. Can I ask what for? He stepped closer, smirk gone. Are you refusing to comply? She stayed put. No, I'm asking a question. Something flickered across his face, maybe irritation, maybe amusement. Then he reached for his radio. Her heart rate picked up, but her face remained unreadable. Officer, she said, her voice firm and even, I'm fully aware of my rights and of your limits. That got to him. His jaw clenched. You're under arrest, he snapped, reaching for her wrist. Renee moved slightly, evading his grip. On what grounds? He produced his handcuffs. Obstruction. So that was the angle. Her training took over. Pulse steady, breath in control. She had two options, comply and contest later, or resist and risk escalation. She chose carefully. With slow, deliberate motion, she turned and placed her hands on the roof of her car. The metal felt cold under her skin. Briggs didn't waste time. He yanked her arms back harshly, tightened the cuffs too much, and shoved her toward the squad car. You have no idea what you're doing, she muttered. Briggs laughed, pushing her into the back seat. Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing. But he didn't. Not even close. The hard plastic seat bit into her back. Renee sat quietly, wrists aching from the cuffs. She controlled her breathing. The door slammed shut. Briggs strutted back to his car, muttering into his radio. She looked at the partition separating her from the front. Her reflection stared back, calm, collected, but underneath something smoldered. She had faced military drills, high-risk missions, interrogations in hostile nations. But this was different. This was a man with a badge, high on authority, sure he was above consequence. Minutes passed. 5, 10. She shifted slightly, testing. The cuffs. Too tight. Deliberate. Briggs finally returned and slid into the driver's seat, whistling to himself. Well, well, he said, fastening his belt. Let's go for a little ride. She didn't speak. He pulled away from the shoulder, lights still flashing. The red and blue beams reflected in the mirrors, trailing behind like a warning. You know, he said casually, most people just follow instructions when I give them. Renee exhaled slowly through her nose. And most cops don't arrest people for questioning a stop. Briggs chuckled and shook his head. Lady, you really think you're so important, don't you? She looked at him through the glass. I don't think I know. That gave him pause. Just briefly. His hands tightened around the wheel, a flash of irritation showing through. Then it vanished. You military? He asked, tone suddenly shifting. She said nothing. Yeah, I figured. You got that rules don't apply to me vibe. He smirked. Bet you thought I'd let you off easy when you mentioned your rank, huh? Still, she remained silent. Briggs clicked his tongue. What a shame, he said, shaking his head. Could have all been avoided if you just kept quiet. Her jaw set. The nerve, blaming her for his abuse of power. The station loomed ahead, a squat, gray building just off the main road. The lot was nearly empty. Late-night bookings were slow. He parked in a reserved spot near the front, turned off the engine and looked at her through the barrier. Gotta admit, he said smugly, I love it when they make things easy. Before she could reply, he was out of the car, slamming the door behind him. Moments later, her door opened. Let's go, he ordered. Renee shifted her wrist as she stepped out. The cuffs bit deeper into her skin. He hadn't eased the cuffs at all. She held her head high as he guided her inside, past a bored-looking desk officer, and into processing. The holding area reeked of stale coffee and body odor. A metal bench stretched along the far wall, and a steel door to the cells loomed just beyond. Briggs only removed her cuffs briefly, just long enough to push her through booking. Fingerprints, mugshot, the whole procedure. The officers behind the desk barely glanced her way, just going through the motions. She'd seen that kind of apathy before, the sort that allowed men like Briggs to thrive. When it was done, he gripped her wrist again and pulled her toward the cells. Think you're clever, huh? He muttered under his breath. She cast a sidelong look at him. I don't have to think. His hold tightened. She knew that got to him. Enjoy your stay, Briggs sneered, shoving her into the cell. Renee caught herself before she could fall. She turned back as the bars slid close between them. Briggs smirked from the other side, tapping his fingers against the steel before turning and walking away. The lock clicked shut. She inhaled deeply and then sat down. The cold metal pressed against her through her jeans, steadying her. One night, that's all she'd need. Because Briggs had no clue who he was dealing with. The bench was icy, hard, unrelenting. Renee shifted, rolling her shoulders to work out the tension. The cell wasn't much. Full walls, a dim, flickering bulb, and a faint stench of sweat and disinfectant. She'd stayed in far worse, places where discomfort wasn't the only threat. This was nothing, but that didn't mean she wasn't angry. Through the bars, she could hear muted voices from the front desk, the shuffle of paperwork, the clink of a coffee mug on wood. She let her breath out slowly, deliberately. Regulate the breathing, steady the mind. Basic training burned into her long before she ever joined the fleet. Then came the heavy footsteps. She recognized his gait before he even appeared. That same arrogant swagger, like a man who thought he was untouchable. He came into view moments later, arms folded across his chest, the same cocky grin on his face. Comfortable? She didn't reply. He tilted his head, stepping closer to the bars. You know, if you just cooperate, you wouldn't be here right now. A small smile tugged at her lips. I'm exactly where I need to be. His grin faltered, just for a second. She saw it, a flicker of irritation, maybe doubt. He masked it quickly, scoffing as he glanced toward the quiet holding area. "No one's coming for you tonight, lady," he said, shrugging. "Guess you have some time to think about your attitude." Renee remained still, unmoved. Briggs leaned in slightly. "See, the problem is people like you think the rules don't apply. You think confidence alone can get you out of this." She let him talk. Let him keep running his mouth. It didn't matter, because he was clueless about what was coming. As if on cue, another officer walked up the hallway, a younger guy, probably late 20s, wearing the standard uniform. He stopped a few feet away, holding a clipboard. "Sergeant," the officer said, voice uncertain. "We got a call." Briggs barely looked his way. The officer shifted awkwardly. "I think you need to hear this." Briggs frowned, gave Renee a final look, and walked off. She sat back, listening closely. The voices were hushed, but she picked up bits and pieces, mentions of a lawyer, someone higher up, questions about the legality of her detainment. Briggs's tone dropped, sharp and irritated. The younger officer stammered a reply, but whatever it was didn't please him. Then came the heavy steps again. Briggs returned, jaw clenched, fists balled at his sides. His smirk was gone. "What the hell did you do?" Renee leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "I didn't do anything." She tilted her head. "But word travels, and some of us have powerful friends." She saw the shift in his face, the realization setting in. Control was slipping through his fingers. He turned away, muttering, and stomped down the hall. Renee exhaled. It wouldn't be long now. And once the truth surfaced, Briggs was going to regret every choice that brought him here. Morning light filtered through the tall courthouse windows, casting long shadows across polished floors. The air was sharp, cold enough to settle deep into your bones if you stayed still too long. Renee stood by the defense table, her stance calm, her gaze focused. No cuffs, no orange uniform, no cell, just a navy blazer, a crisp blouse, and a presence that couldn't be denied. She wasn't alone. Her attorney, Carla Whitman, flipped through a file, her movements crisp and efficient. No chit-chat, no wasted energy. Renee appreciated that. The rear doors opened with a creak. Briggs entered, shoulders squared, chin up, but something had changed. His steps were rigid now, his expression uneasy. Renee caught his eye. He looked away. Good. The judge entered and the room fell silent. Judge Alan Kirkland, a tired-looking older man, adjusted his glasses as he sat down. "Let's get started," he said, glancing at the files in front of him. The prosecutor stood, a man in his 50s with neatly parted hair. "Your Honor, we believe Lieutenant Commander Renee Dawson was detained without lawful cause. Furthermore, there is evidence of a recurring pattern of misconduct by the arresting officer, Sergeant Daniel Briggs." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Briggs shifted, his jaw tight. The judge peered over his glasses. "Sergeant Briggs? Care to elaborate?" Briggs leaned forward. "Your Honor, the defendant was uncooperative during a routine stop. The prosecutor cut him off." "Uncooperative?" He held up a document. "Lieutenant Commander Dawson has an exemplary military record. Naval Academy graduate, multiple commendations, no criminal record. No outstanding violations. And you're saying she posed such a threat that you had to detain her over a broken tail light?" Briggs opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence hung heavy. The prosecutor continued, flipping pages. An internal audit also shows a high number of traffic stops involving black drivers under Sergeant Briggs' watch. More whispers filled the room. Briggs's face hardened. The judge placed the file down. "Sergeant, I don't like where this is headed." Briggs sat back, arms folded. She resisted. The prosecutor arched a brow. "Body cam footage says otherwise." Another wave of chatter rippled through the gallery. Briggs turned defensive. "I followed protocol." "Let's see the footage," the judge said, glancing at the bailiff. A screen descended. The video began to roll. Renee didn't watch. She remembered it vividly. Briggs shouting commands, her calm, measured tone, the unnecessary escalation. his smug expression as he cinched the cuffs. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Judge Kirkland leaned forward, fingers interlaced. "Sergeant Briggs, you breached protocol. You executed an illegal arrest and omitted crucial information in your initial report." Briggs opened his mouth to respond, but the judge cut him off. "The charges against Lieutenant Commander Dawson are dismissed, effective immediately." The gavel struck with a firm finality. "And I strongly recommend an internal investigation into Sergeant Briggs's actions." The tension in the courtroom broke like a stretched wire snapping. Briggs looked stunned as though he'd taken a blow to the chest. His face turned red, fists balled at his sides. Renee exhaled, slow and measured. She never doubted this outcome. As she gathered her belongings, she looked at Briggs one last time. Their eyes locked. No words needed to be spoken. This time, it wasn't her reputation on the line, it was his. Briggs stormed out, his boots echoing in the polished hallway. He could feel the stares, officers, court clerks, even reporters who'd come after hearing about the case. He wasn't used to this. He was used to control, to commanding respect or fear. But now, that power he once wielded felt like it was slipping away. Then came the voice that cut through everything. "Sergeant Briggs." He turned. Chief Eldon Baker stood, arms crossed, expression unreadable. A veteran of the force for over 3 decades, Baker's presence carried weight. Briggs straightened. "Sir." Without a word, Baker gestured toward a nearby office. Once the door shut behind them, the chief's tone changed. "What the hell were you thinking?" Briggs let out a breath. "I was doing my job." Baker tossed a folder onto the desk. It hit hard. "Not according to this. The body cam, your arrest records, you didn't even know who you were dealing with." Briggs's jaw tightened. "What difference does that make?" "Everything," Baker replied, voice low but cutting. "That wasn't just some random civilian. That was a senior officer in the U.S. Navy. Do you think this is going to blow over?" Briggs looked away, his jaw clenched. She was being disrespectful. She was being disrespectful. She challenged my authority. "That's not illegal," Baker interrupted. Briggs scoffed. "You don't understand. People like her." Baker's eyes narrowed. "People like what?" Briggs went silent. The chief exhaled, rubbing his temples. "The DA's office is reviewing all your cases, 5 years' worth. You've been flagged for racial bias, and this department won't protect you." Briggs swallowed hard. "So what now?" "Effective immediately, you're suspended. Internal Affairs is taking over, and if what they find lines up with this pattern..." He shook his head. "Your career is finished." Briggs looked stricken. "This is ridiculous." "Watch it," Baker warned, raising a hand. "Pack up your things, and get yourself a lawyer." Briggs stood frozen, fists clenched, his world unraveling in real time. For the first time, he realized he wasn't invincible. Across the city, Renee sat in a quiet cafe, stirring her coffee. The case had already hit the news. Footage of the incident was going viral. Navy officer wrongfully detained, investigation underway. She wasn't shocked. From the moment she stepped out of her car that night, she'd known how it would play out. She'd seen men like Briggs before, entitled, overconfident, hiding behind their authority. But not this time. Her phone vibrated. A message from her lawyer. "Briggs is suspended. Possible charges pending." She sipped her coffee. Good. She looked out the window, watching the city pulse around her. The battle wasn't over, not for her or for the others who had likely been mistreated by Briggs in the past. But today? Today was a victory. The air smelled faintly of rain as she stepped outside. The weight of the last 24 hours could have dragged her down, but it didn't. She walked tall, steady. Another buzz from her phone. A number she recognized. She answered. "Lieutenant Commander," came a familiar voice. "I assume you've seen the headlines?" "I have." A pause. "And how are you holding up?" She glanced at her reflection in the storefront window. No signs of fatigue, no cracks in her armor. "I feel like I did exactly what needed to be done." The voice softened. "That's what I figured you'd say. The Department of Defense is watching this closely. Don't be surprised if they ask you to speak publicly. She let out a quiet breath. Not sure I want to be anyone's headline. You already are. A beat. And what happened to you represents something larger. She knew that. Always had. Briggs wasn't a lone actor. He was part of a system that let officers like him operate unchecked. This wasn't just her fight. It was for everyone who'd faced the same thing but didn't have her rank, her resources, or her voice. She leaned against a light pole, watching the flow of traffic. It's not the first time something like this has happened, she said, and it won't be the last. No, the voice agreed, but it's the first time Briggs is paying for it, and that's because you didn't back down. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting that truth settle in. She hadn't backed down. Not when he pulled her over. Not when he tried to bully her. Not when he threw her in a cell. She stood her ground, and now she'd won. One more thing, the voice added. You might get a call from the mayor's office. Her brow arched. Really? They want to recognize you for professionalism and poise. She smirked. Now that's rich. The voice chuckled. You going to accept it? She paused and shrugged. I'll think about it. She ended the call and slipped her phone into her coat pocket. Across the street, a mother walked hand in hand with her little boy. His laughter rang out, free, joyful. Renee watched him, thoughtful. She hadn't only fought for herself, she fought for him. For every black child who deserved a world where power didn't equal abuse. She took a deep breath, then turned and walked away, her step steady, her purpose sharp. Because this fight was never just about her. Power, when unchecked, becomes power misused. And if we want change, we must hold it accountable. What happened to Renee happens every day. To people without rank, without resources, without a platform. That's why it's critical to speak up. To demand better. To challenge the status quo. If this story made you reflect, share it. If it angered you, talk about it. If it opened your eyes, don't turn away. Because real change begins with real conversations.